I could ask your attention, we will call the meeting to order. We have a quorum and we have a really packed agenda tonight, so I want to be more respectful of our stakeholders' time than our congresspersons are their time, so you're not here until late tonight. This is the January meeting of the Board of Directors of Neighborhood Council Valley Village. This is your elected board. We are here to function in a go-between between the city and our great community of Valley Village, over 25,000 stakeholders, and what we think is the best neighborhood in the entire city of Los Angeles. All right, Jenny and we have a meeting every month. It's on the fourth Wednesday every month, with rare exceptions, and those were last month when our meeting was on the Christmas holiday, actual day of Christmas, and on Thanksgiving was the night before Thanksgiving. So typically, I would say at least 80% of the time, most of 90% of the time, one Wednesday of every month in this room. We're glad you're here. There's pizza in the back and water, so help yourself if you're hungry. Tonight, we're very privileged to have our city council involved with here and take time to give us a few comments about what's been happening at the city level and in his office, and then he's very graciously agreed to take questions. We would love to get to every single question. I know everybody here probably wants to ask a question, but we do have a 2-hour time constraint. So if you'd like to ask a question from the councilman, there are cards in the back. On the front, it says name, and you can put any information you want, an email address, a phone number, your address, and your question on the back. If we are able to get everybody's questions tonight, that's great. I highly doubt we'll be able to do that. The council office has agreed to take these and answer every single question that's turned in. So if you get to ask it tonight, hopefully you'll get an answer tonight. If you don't get a chance to ask a question tonight, they will get back to you within 7 days, I believe, 7 working days. So put your question on a card. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Just bring it up here, and we'll try to answer your question. We start the meeting with a roll call. Mark is not here yet, so I will do the roll call. Tony Braswell here, Jenny Hatfield, Dorothy Apple, Dale Leibowitz Neglia is not here, Darryl Baskin is on his way, Glenn Locke, Desmond, Alice, here. Suzanne, here. Lisa, here. Paulette, here. Aaron, here. Maribel, here. Jeff, Mark, Eileen, here. Jake, here. Right. Meetings at all city functions, city sanction meetings, and we're part of the city government, are governed by 2 sets of rules. The first is Robert's Rules of Order. Those are rules that are in a book that we have that pretty much give you guidance for anything that can happen in a meeting, so that there's structure and that everybody can participate equally and on the same terms. The second is the Brown Act. That's the state law that guarantees that everybody has an equal opportunity to participate in meetings. So we try to adhere to both of those, and thank you for understanding. If we don't quite get it right, let us know. We'll try to get it right. We have folks here that know the Brown Act and Robert's rules far better than I do, so we'll ask them for help if we need it. Before we start, Rob, can we really just ask you for a minute or two? Sure. This is our senior lead officer, Rob.
Woo, Rob!
A little louder here.
It's a rowdy crowd.
Thank you, Tony. Wow, that's nice. Maybe I'll have 5 minutes now. No, I just want to touch on a couple things. Happy New Year's. It's good to see everybody. Last year was a good success crime-wise. I didn't know we were going to be able to go another 5% down last year after following 8% the year before, so we've done very well this first week. I'm at actually break-even numbers crime-wise. The crime is actually looking very, very good. I know I say that realizing there's quality of life issues that we're all looking at all the time with things you know we're working on with homeless. One of the big concerns right now is traffic. And traffic safety, pedestrian safety. Those are going to be some of the things. That's going to be probably a main focus for the next few weeks or so. We're putting together a task force which will involve pedestrian violations, vehicle violations, cell phone stuff. Guys, I know nobody in here does this, but a lot of people continue to use their phones and they cannot get off their phones in the car. We're going to try to focus on that. Unfortunately, we lost a sheriff, an off-duty sheriff, a couple weeks ago, or last week, and I'm sure you guys saw that in the news. She was trying to help a lady that fell down at Riverside and Whitsitt. That vehicle that hit her was actually not at fault. She was in the street when she shouldn't have been, trying to do a good thing. But that, when we go back and review our traffic maps and see where we get the most traffic accidents, Riverside and Whitsitt is definitely one of them, and I hear you guys, because I got a lot of complaints about that. We're gonna try to get a traffic trailer out there. Hopefully we get a speed trailer out there soon. And there's not enforcement that comes with that speed trailer, but it does remind people you're going a little too fast. It will have an impact of slowing down traffic, so I want to do that. I will be hitting areas, Magnolia and Wilkinson, Magnolia and Whitsitt, Laurel Canyon and Riverside. These areas are our biggest areas for traffic concerns. I know you guys know that. Just a reminder, get the word out to your neighborhoods, families, friends. Just take a moment to slow down. You shouldn't be in such a rush to go everywhere. So just take a breath and slow it down. Be off your phones. I don't know why people can't get off the phones. I see people, I sit next to them and they're scrolling their phone right next to me and are just confused. Why are you bothering me? And I'm like in a black and white hitting the whip, but I'm schooling. So we're going to try to get some messaging out and realize more than just a ticket that's going to be very expensive. We don't want anybody getting hurt out there. Again, I know you have a very full agenda. I didn't want to get into talking too long and taking up too much time, but I'm going to be here. I'm going to stay for the whole meeting, so unless you guys go to like 11, I don't want to
And just real quick, Rob, help me with this. Holding your phone out here does not mean hands-free.
Hands-free means hands-free. It cannot mean hands-free. Doesn't matter if you're stopped at a light, if you are in traffic with your car going, you cannot have that phone anywhere in your hand. Go to the whatever Target and buy a $5 little adapter that you can put it on your phone or put it on your dash or your window. Yeah. Okay, real quick, and I don't want to get too much into that because I won't have. 8502 is the section we use in regards to where vehicles can be on the street. It's vehicle dwelling section. That thing has been expiring every 6 months. It's sunset December 31st. So in regards to individuals living in their vehicles or RVs, we are not enforcing any of that right now with sunset. I have no ordinance to enforce on that. Maybe the council member can speak more on that and see what they're going to do. I don't have any word as if there's any direction to renew that. But that's where we're at right now. Yeah, Gary.
I know that we're talking about this. Somebody told me it passed, and it's in effect. If bicycles can now cross the street on a red light.
Well, not on a red. They have to. I don't know. I'm not sure, but with that, I haven't heard anything on that. But as far as bicycles go in the street, they have to follow the rules of the road just like any other vehicle. They can ride on the sidewalk. People think they can't ride on the sidewalk, but they have to yield to the pedestrians.
I'm well aware that there is a new glitch.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I'll check on that. As far as I know, that they shouldn't be able to ride against the red light.
They do it anyway.
But here's where I won't dispute with you. Last year they passed that blinking red hand where you used to have to stop. There is no time limit on when you can cross the street. You can cross as long as the light's green. That blinking red hand doesn't really hold anything. So I don't know. I'll double check on that, but that seems very strange to me. But I'm not saying you're wrong.
Okay, Rob, thank you very much.
All right, Tony, thank you for your time. I'll be out if anybody.
Rob's going to hang around, so if you got questions, he's here. It's a great time to talk to your senior leader.
Yeah.
You never talked to him, he's a great guy.
Thank you,
All right,
Tony.
we're going to move on to, we're going to come back to Mr. Pretorian when he gets here, because we want to make sure that we give him as much time as possible. Jenny, can we've done a roll call. Agenda distribution. The agenda was distributed. Are there any changes or questions about the agenda?
Yes.
I got it. Anybody else? Any objection?
I made a change it after the last year.
You made changes in the back meeting?
Yes.
I didn't get that. So what would you like to, how would you like to
Just that
add?
I was an ambassador and went to the meeting at City Hall.
Well, you can report that. Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, you can report that. Oh, I knew that. I didn't make an agenda out of
But
it.
she said we needed ambassadors for it.
Right, and I think we need to tell people that, absolutely. Yeah, yes, definitely. Let's do it during the executive report, if that's okay.
Sure.
And let's see, you've got minutes. I sent them out again today because I know it's been 2 months. Did anyone have any other changes? I got changes and made those. Any objections to approving them? The changes were pretty cosmetic, Jenny, right? Tony's bad grammar and typing.
Yeah.
So any objection to approving the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those are approved. We will now go to the executive fee report. Jenny?
Yeah, basically, it's the bank report, the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils. It has been around since 2003. It consists of the 34 neighborhood councils that make up the San Fernando Valley. We meet once a month on the second Thursday of the month, and basically we usually get about at least 20 representatives from 20 neighborhood councils who attend. We discuss issues that concern all of us, and basically we take positions on them. We're not part of the neighborhood council system. We're not administered by the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, which neighborhood councils are. So we have a little more leeway in some of the stuff we do. But we do tackle basically the major issues. Usually I attend on behalf of our council. I report back what we're talking about. Tonight I have a bit of stuff, and I also sent out to everybody, I tried to get where people were sitting, 2 flyers. One is guidelines for the use of neighborhood council funds and resources on public commissions, and the other one was on ballot measures. 2 fact sheets that were handed out at the bank meeting that I think you should take a look at. I just wanted to briefly go over some of that stuff. We can talk about it at the next meeting if you want to get into it more. We can agendize it. And basically, the Board of Neighborhood Council has it's called BONC, was part of the charter, and it is created to sort of make policy or procedures for all of the neighborhood councils. They propose it, and then it goes to the city council committee that actually can make ordinance, and then if it comes out of that committee, it's put before the full city council. So BONC has, there's about 7, I think, members on BONC. They come from board members from all over the city. Some of the proposals they have made, I just wanted to run by everybody. The board service acknowledgement document, whereby elected or selected board members affirm that they are knowledgeable about the responsibility of board members. So getting board members, existing board members to sign a document saying you are aware of your responsibilities. Also, this would hold for candidates. So any of you who are thinking of running as a candidate, one of the things I have proposed to BONC and to review committees is that candidates sign a little form saying, this is, I know what I'm getting into. Because sometimes people volunteer and they don't realize what responsibilities are qualified with that, how much time and whatever. So these are all proposals and they're not passed. So that's one of them. Planning 101 training will be required of all members of the planning and land use committees, 60 days to do so. And if not in compliance, members would not be able to vote on motions or recommendations within the committee. So this is a way BONC is saying of trying to get everybody on the planning and land use committee up to speed on the basics of what planning requires. And that's been around for a long time. I don't know if it will be implemented. Handbook. There will be an NC handbook that will be created, and all board members and John may publish a list to those who fail to acknowledge that they've seen this handbook and maybe take a look at it. I know I've got plenty, but this would be, I guess, a different one. So maybe okay. John should develop a leadership academy for board officers. So that would mean the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary would have a leadership training. It doesn't state whether it's mandatory or not. To develop a dispute resolution process and develop what's done to handle disputes in a timely manner using available resources. This could be a problem for a lot of neighborhood councils if you have disputes with stakeholders to the board members to board members. Having a better process of trying to handle those types of claims. So that's what this would be about. Then they proposed a policy for the censure of board members, how you would go about censuring a board member, how you would go about removing a board officer for various offenses. And those last 2 are pretty long, so what I do is scan and send the information to all of you guys, And you can look at them at your leisure, and if you want to discuss them at the next meeting, or I guess elections and bylaws, you can probably take a look at them first, maybe make some recommendations to the full board. So that's something you can do. The other thing, the NC guidelines on the public policy positions, that was one of the handouts I gave you. Basically, NCs can advocate to the city, but not to the public at large, at a specific point of view, a job mission. Okay, that's the gist of this. NCs can present public hearings on an issue, but all points of view must be represented, and boards can adopt a position on the issue and communicate that to the city. We have the ability to do what we call community impact statements. We make a motion on a particular subject. If the board approves, then we send this to the city council. It goes to all the council members. It's put on the calendar. They know which neighborhood councils are opposed, against, or for. Guidelines on ballot measures. NC's ability to use public funds or resources, so that even your Xerox machine, your pencils, your paper, whatever, in connection with a city or state ballot measures is significantly restrained. Even expenditures made prior to a ballot measure being placed on the ballot may be prohibited if they are aimed at influencing the voters or only presenting one side of the matter. So in the past, we had a lot of issues. We've always had pros and cons, like the best of my knowledge. And basically, if you've taken a position, you've done a CIS, we've done it on state elections as well as city. It indicates that we should refrain from taking a position on ballot measure once it's placed on the ballot. And you can read more on that particular statute.
Do we need to do anything with this now, or it's just
No,
they're
I'm saying I
considering it?
wanted to tell you guys what's being out there.
That's good.
So, when you're actually voting on it, it doesn't tell you.
How do we weigh in on this if we have to go to the city with our thoughts first?
Well, I think.
We go to
that-
Bonk meeting?
I think, well, you can go to Bonk. I think Bonk has already done this with their meetings, because these are their proposals, so that's been done. Basically, I think this is going to the city council committee, what is it, whatever. And so basically, I think maybe election bylaws, just take a look at a couple of these things, and then, make a recommendation to the board as to what we propose or whatever. I have a feeling that some
We
of
should
us
do
might
that
be
at the
opposed to
committee
some
and
of
then
this.
let the council
So
speak.
why don't we do that we'll do it at our next elections and bylaws committee, and anyone that wants to come, let us know ahead of time. If we have more than 5 people, we have to call that a special meeting. So if you're interested.
We should get to the council.
All right, anything else? Okay. All right, that's the executive report. Suzanne, you wanted to tell us your ambassador for the census. You went to the meetings.
Yes, and it's an important part for all of us to please take the census. It affects us not only in funding for the state, but in representation. It's the largest state in the union, and we have 2 senators in our tinier, smaller states that have 13 people, so it's about the funding. So it's really important. And as an ambassador, I can help you in any way. If you have any questions, please let us know. There are also cards in the back that will explain the process to you.
And they're looking to hire people and pay them.
They are,
So
yeah,
go
for
to the
jobs.
website. If you're interested in being part of the census, it doesn't necessarily just mean volunteering. There's some nice paying jobs, and I know lots of our stakeholders would be interested in helping. So Suzanne, thanks for doing that. I skipped over number 2, inadvertently, sorry about that. Every card I have so far, I may have missed one, seems to be for the councilman. Were there any public comments that were not related to this? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say real quick, I came to the Events and Outreach Committee meeting last week, and there was nobody here. And I sat outside and emailed Tony and Jenny, and I never got any response from it. I think if meetings are going to be canceled, there should be something posted or an email blast sent out, because I came and nobody was here.
Oh, great, thank you.
And secondly, I turned in a couple of addresses 3 or 4 meetings ago to Jenny, and I think, Tony, you got that too, and there's been no follow-up on it. Those houses still have hedges on the corner that are growing up over the stop signs, and it's dangerous.
Can you write those down again? I know that they were turned in, but it was over the holidays. If you would just write them down for me again, I promise you I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. For that meeting, it was the night of the memorial service, and the folks, we all got here, and then we went to the memorial service, is that what we call it? The intersection for the sheriff who died, and then we came back here, so I'm sorry that we missed you.
We did meet at 8:15.
Yeah.
We got back after that was over. Any other public comments that weren't turned in? For
I did turn
Yes, ma'am.
one in for my neighbor. My name is Julie Gobert. I
Yes,
turned one
ma'am.
in for Elise, but she's not here. But there's also an item on your agenda, number 12, about the cell phone tower in Tujunga and Sarah. So it's about that, and I'm happy to wait till you get to number 12
Do
to
you
talk about
mind,
it.
because we,
Not at all.
I'm glad somebody brought that up, because we need some dialogue for a little bit of guidance on this. But if you don't mind
Absolutely.
waiting, yes, that's why it's on the agenda, and are you the one who's been emailing?
Yes.
Thank you for being persistent.
Yes.
We had it on the agenda, but I sent an email and it bounced back, so I'd love to talk about that.
I have all the
Thanks.
information. Thank you.
Great. So we now have Mr. Pretorian here. There he is. Hi. I will very briefly say that we are, there are 15 council districts, and I think that's right, 15. And we've had, in my life here, we've had 3 council persons. I don't think I've ever known one as good as the one we have now. I know that there are other neighborhood councils who will say, oh my God, I wish we had the support you have. So I will tell you from an administrative standpoint, with what we try to do working with stakeholders to make Valley Village the best it can be, we get great support from the council office. Over half of the calls we get, we have to pick up the phone and call them. They always answer, they always help us out. Sometimes it's not the answer we want, but that's life, you know? But they do answer the phone and they do get back to us. So on behalf of us, to all of your staff and team, thank you very much, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Do you mind if I stand here? Because you'll be the only one who has their back to me that way. So, and let me just first of all return the kind words, because although I thank every neighborhood council that I visit, and with good reason, because neighborhood council board members spend a massive amount of their time digging into issues, grappling with some of the most controversial issues in any neighborhood, trying to bring people together when issues are dividing them. They do all of this as volunteers, and when you have an effective neighborhood council, it really makes a pronounced difference in the quality of life in the community. And this neighborhood council is among the most effective, best organized, best prepared, most persuasive of all of the neighborhood councils I've experienced, not only in my district, but throughout the city. So I want to thank all of you who serve on the board. And honestly, all of you as well who come to meetings regularly, because it's community engagement, you know, that allows them to function well, and that allows me to function well as well. You know, speaking up is what makes a difference. And working through issues, sometimes that are really, really hard, divisive issues. It's not easy work, it's not pleasant work sometimes, but it's what makes communities communities, and it's what makes communities so successful. And let me just, I was going to talk about this later, but I'll just throw it in right now because it's relevant. You all know that the city is updating the community plans throughout the city, and this is on a schedule to get every community plan updated, because it's been a long time since some of them have been. A lot of them are woefully obsolete now, given changes in circumstances, changes in demographics, investments in transportation infrastructure, all kinds of other things. This neighborhood council and this community has been more engaged in your community plan update than any other in the entire San Fernando Valley. And that's a real tribute to the neighborhood council and to all of you. And it will matter for years to come, because when that community plan is updated, that's what's going to define what your community looks like, what your neighborhoods look like, literally for years to come. So if you are not at that table and advocating for the very neighborhood-specific kind of things that you need in that community plan, your issues, your concerns, you know, are likely to be, you know, overlooked by the planners. But because you've been engaged, I really, my hat's off to the degree that you've been engaged. It will make a great difference. I'm very sorry about this, Tony. I feel.
No, thank you.
So I want to just kind of give you an overview of some general city things, and then talk about some Valley Village specific things, and then I'm happy to talk to you about whatever questions you might have. First, kind of the 30,000-foot view of things that are going on in the city right now. You know that we just had a change in leadership in the city council. We have a new council president, Nuri Martinez, who represents our neighboring district. I continue for the moment, I don't know if this will be for the longer term, but I continue for the moment to serve as the budget chair of the city council. And I've served in that role now for 8 years. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that first, because it touches everything else. It's sometimes difficult for us to remember now, unless we sort of put ourselves in the shoes that we were in 2010, when I became your counselor, how bad it was just a few years ago. When we were still in the aftermath of the Great Recession, the city was facing real peril. The CAO of the city was projecting a budget deficit of over $1 billion with a B dollars in a general fund budget that was only about $4.5 or $5 billion at the time. So this was a massive problem. So severe that Mayor Reardon wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying that it was inevitable that the city was going to file bankruptcy. There was no way out of it. You might as well just do it and get it over with. That was 10 years ago. We didn't take Mayor Reardon's advice. We chipped away at this. We reduced the size of the city's workforce through attrition to the smallest it had been since Tom Bradley had been mayor. We consolidated. We had some modest reforms of pension obligations and other things. We deferred some raises. And through a variety of methodical steps, step by step, we chipped away at that structural deficit to the point that it has now been about 85% eliminated. We have a balanced annual budget, although this budget, we have some challenges, and I can talk about that in questions if you'd like. This year is going to be a little bit more difficult than the past. But in the process of doing that, we also began hiring firefighters again, who had been put on hold for a long time. Began hiring, staffing up in other departments that were high priorities, and at the same time we built the largest reserve that the city has ever had in the history of the city of Los Angeles. A budget stabilization fund for the first time in the history of the city of Los Angeles. What does that mean? Why is that important? Well, it's important first of all because the credit rating of the city goes up, which makes it much cheaper for the city to borrow money. It saves the taxpayers money that way. So that's number one. Number two, we know that there's going to be a financial downturn at some point. This city is very sensitive to economic factors. When there's a little downturn in the economy, it means a great deal of harm to the city budget because our revenue sources are all economically sensitive. Sales tax, people aren't buying things, our sales tax plummets. Property tax, right now it's good, but back then when people were being foreclosed on and were walking away from their houses because they were upside down and so on, property tax, went off the edge of the table. Business tax, people aren't starting new businesses, so all of these areas are very economically sensitive. Things are exceptionally strong now, but we know they won't be. So having that reserve means that when there is a downturn, we aren't going to have to make the kinds of, horrible choices that we were faced with back then in the recession. When council members, when the mayor was proposing bankruptcy, former mayor, when some council members were proposing we lay off 6,000 city employees. These are drastic measures that we won't have to take because we have this reserve. Okay? It's stability, so that's very important. As much as I would like to take full credit for all that we did in that, I do not. A lot of the reason that we bounced back from the Great Recession is because this city became a place that people wanted to invest in, start businesses in. Our unemployment dropped at a more rapid rate than counties, states, countries. We're breaking all records right now when it comes to gross business revenues, traffic through the airport, LAX, traffic through the ports, trade with other countries, tourism. All of these are tremendously powerful economic indicators that the economy in Los Angeles is very strong. You see it downtown, see the cranes in the air, foreign direct investment coming in, because people with money are betting on the future of Los Angeles. Even more so now that we have the Olympics coming, we have Measure M, which means that we're making the largest investment in public transportation in the entire United States of America right now. These are all really strong indicators of a bright economic future. All of that's the good news. The bad news, of course, is what you see every single day when you walk through your neighborhood, when you drive to work, when you go to any other neighborhood in the city. And that is that this strong economy is not helping everyone. And there's a whole bunch of people in this city who are being entirely left out of that. And for that reason, and a variety of other reasons, we're faced with this crisis, unprecedented crisis of homelessness throughout the city. That is a catastrophe. It is the most challenging thing any of us who are in public service will have to deal with in our entire careers. And it is a humanitarian crisis. It is a public health crisis. It's a public safety crisis. It's a crisis that rips apart the fabric of our community. And it's intolerable, it's unsustainable, and it cannot ever be considered the new normal in this city. I'll go into details on that as much as you'd like about the reasons for it and some of the policy limitations and so on that we haven't addressed. But I do just want to tell you about some of the things that I'm working on, because while the city as a whole, and Officer Benavidez and others will tell you who have to deal with this, will tell you the limitations that we have in maintaining just law and order on the streets with homelessness because of a variety of court decisions and so on that say, in essence, you can't criminalize the fact of being homeless, and you can't criminalize the natural outgrowths of homelessness unless and until you provide alternatives to sleeping on the streets. And as you all know, until, it's going to be a while before we have sufficient housing, supportive housing, affordable housing, and especially shelter to house over 35,000 homeless people in the city of Los Angeles. We don't have nearly enough adequate places for them to go. And until we do, we're constrained with our ability to respond. So here's a few things that I'm doing. First of all, in the next few months, I was hoping it would be done within the next month. It might be a little bit longer than that. We're going to have not one, but 2 bridge home shelters opened in Council District 2 with nearly 200 beds, shelter beds available. One's in Van Nuys, one's in North Hollywood. Both of them are locations where we worked with the community and got the community support. So you've seen other places where people have come unglued about the idea of having a shelter in their area, and we worked with the community. We cited these in places with community input. They're going to be, they're not going to present a problem with the community. They have the community support, and they're going to relieve a lot of the street impact of homelessness that we have by getting almost 200 people out from under bridges and into shelters. So that's one thing. We are going to open very shortly, I wish I had the exact date, but within the next couple of months, the very first homelessness service navigation center in the entire city of Los Angeles. And this is going to be a place where every single day there's going to be hygiene, and storage for items, voluntary and involuntary, so that when somebody when there's a cleanup, or somebody's arrested or someone, or when goods are abandoned and we have to bag and tag them, we're going to have a place to take that now, so that we're going to be able to do that more effectively. There's also going to be social services on site 7 days a week, so that when people have an issue and need to be connected with a service that's going to help them address that issue and break the cycle of homelessness, there's going to be somebody there, a place there that they can go and do that. They're going to have an opportunity to have job training and other social services. There's going to be a day labor site on the same spot, so that people will be able to actually get work as well. So it's bringing all these things together in one place, one stop for somebody who's homeless to be able to break that cycle.
When will that be applied?
So the construction is almost done, and I wish I had a date to tell you, ribbon cutting. I visited a month or so ago, and most of the basic construction is all done, so it's the last few touches. Do we have any updates, you guys? Do you know? That, by the way, you all know Jessica in the back, and that's Doug Minton in the back of my staff. No, okay.
No, I didn't.
It should be within a couple
months.
It's a matter of weeks, not many months. So, but I will definitely let you know, because I would love to have you all come and see it and see what's possible when we do this. It is on Sherman Way, just to the east of Lancashire. So it's right underneath where the DWP power line right-of-way goes, where there's some nurseries and stuff underneath it there. It's on where Sherman Way crosses into anything, where the old day labor center was. So we replaced the day labor center with this, which will also be the new day labor center. Safe parking. Many of you have seen here in Valley Village and throughout our community, we have a lot of people who are living in vehicles. And many of them, especially the people who are living in cars as opposed to the RVs, a lot of these are women, sometimes with kids, sometimes parking near the school that their kids attend. And this is, again, not sustainable for the people who are homeless, and it's not good for neighborhoods. You don't want people living in their cars in your neighborhoods. I mean, it's just not a sustainable way to maintain a community. So we created a safe parking lot. We worked with Sheila Kuehl's office to use a county lot. Previously we've been using a city lot, now we've expanded it. So this is a place where somebody who's living in their car, and again, this is not something that we want to be a permanent situation, but it is the reality of the world right now, that there are people in our community living in their cars. So in the meantime, while we're developing the housing, the shelter, and the other options, this gives them a place to park where they can be safe, where there's security on site, where there's a bathroom facility that they can use that's not in your residential neighborhoods. So it's good for them, good for the neighborhood, and it gives us an opportunity to interface with the people who are coming into the lot so that we can connect them with services and do outreach.
And
So
talk to people, because these people are vetted, they're not just people that are just
Yeah,
showing up
it's-
to a lot.
Right.
These people have been vetted, they've been checked out, that they have a job, or whatever their situation is, so they know exactly who these people are, they have hours, they have restrictions, and it's just a safe place where they can close their eyes, and because most of the people in their cars have jobs, they just can't afford a place to live.
Right. So LA Family Housing works with us, a nonprofit organization that provides services to the homeless throughout the city, or throughout the San Fernando Valley anyway. They go through the coordinated entry system so that they're registered with LA Family Housing. Services, there's outreach going on and ongoing. Yeah, they're not going to be somebody who's hiding out from the law. We also have our Homeless Connect Days, which we started when I first came to the council, and they're much more urgent and necessary now than they were then, where in a room like this, we bring together service providers, government agencies from every level of government, faith community, volunteer organizations, anybody who has a piece of the solution that might be necessary for a particular homeless person's needs, we bring it into one room, and then we bring the homeless there. Rather than, giving them a phone number and saying, here, go call, so-and-so, which of course will never happen. We literally bring the homeless population into the room, we triage them as they come in, interview them about what their specific needs are, and then if I find out, Mr. Jones is a veteran who isn't getting veterans benefits, I can take him over to that table where there's somebody from the VA who can take care of that problem right then and there. We've had situations where, people can't get general relief, they can't get any government aid because they have, they've lost everything in a fire, they don't have a driver's license, they don't have any ID, whatever. We have somebody from the DMV right there who can look them up, print an ID card for them so that they can go. If there's anything like that that can provide a service that can help again break that cycle, we get them those services right then and there. So these are a few of the steps that we're taking to try and reduce the impact of homelessness here. But there's a lot more that obviously the city has to do. We're investing in this year's budget almost $500 million on homeless-related programs, just from the city. And most of that is for building things. Most of it is for shelter, permanent supportive housing, affordable housing subsidies, eviction, assistance to avoid homelessness. It's for those sorts of things. But that's on top of what the county is putting in for mental health services, substance abuse prevention, all, of course, law enforcement, all the other things that the county has that are part of that are not the city's bailiwick, but the county's. Fortunately, we're working together very closely with the county for the first time ever. And so those investments are going to begin paying off. It's been frustrating that we still see as much visible evidence of homelessness as we do, especially when you consider the year before last, the city of Los Angeles housed over 20,000 homeless people. Housed them. So if you see the problem that we see, imagine how bad this problem is of people falling into homelessness, that we housed 20,000 and we still have the magnitude that we see on the streets. So that's for a lot of reasons. Some of it is substance abuse, nationwide opioid epidemic that we're suffering. A lot of it is mental health problems that have been unattended now by our society pretty much for about the last 50 years, that we've deinstitutionalized, that we've stigmatized, that we've done all these things to stop people from getting the mental health assistance that they need to live productive lives. A lot of it, though, is, that's sort of, we see those things and you notice those things, but the majority of the homeless population on our streets are there for economic reasons. They are there because we have the least affordable housing market in the United States of America. And so if you are at the bottom of the economic ladder, the average American has $1,000 in savings. $1,000 is the average American savings. Now imagine if you're not average, but you're a minimum wage worker. You're at the bottom of the economic rung. You have a job, but you have, a few bucks in savings, you're living paycheck to paycheck, and then you get laid off. You have a medical emergency. You are a victim of domestic violence, and so you have to flee your home. You have, an ailing parent. You have any of these circumstances that throws you off track, and you can't make your rent. That's how close to the edge a lot of people are in our society right now. And they're falling off that edge every month. So affordability has to be a part of this solution as well. And that's probably the hardest part of this. So anyway, that's a little bit about homelessness. A few Valley Village specific things that I wanted to talk about, and then that I feel like I've gone past my allotted time already. Number one, I hope you've all noticed, sound walls being built, bridges being reinforced for sound walls that are still to come. It will all be done within a year. This is the year, after 15 years of my working with all of you. Well, I got into it when I was elected to the Assembly, I think, which was in 2006. So for me, it's been 13 years. For many of you, it's been longer. But literally, we've been working on this project all this time. $100 million for sound walls along the 170. It's the largest investment in sound walls that Metro has made, I think, ever. And we finally have gotten that done. I think you'll start noticing a lot of benefit from that.
We're going to have a party at the park.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's good.
How about the 1,200 view?
Correct. What's that?
The 1,200 view on the
Yeah,
airport.
yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. I can talk about crime, but I'm sure Officer Benedict and others are talking about that. So, airport. You all have heard about what's been going on with the increased noise situation in Burbank, at Burbank Airport. And I think in some respects, I'll take the blame for maybe you not getting the whole story and maybe not hearing all of the truth about what's been going on with that. Maybe I should have been letting you know where I actually stand on this so that words aren't put into my mouth for me. But I want you to know that this came about, this whole committee came about because rather suddenly in 2017, large parts of my district started experiencing concentrated airport noise that they had never experienced before. And they were kind of stunned that all of a sudden they were experiencing this noise. And a lot of them were hillside residents. We're 1,200 feet. If you're 200 feet higher than, 1,200 feet, 200 feet is a lot. So they got a very significant impact from, these flights. And so we started looking into it and said, what changed? What changed? And especially, some of the folks in the south part of the valley, Sherman Oaks, Encino, Studio City, other places, started looking into this. And it is now proven to be true that the flight tracks have moved in a southerly direction and been more concentrated. And so I got involved as part of this task force that the airport created. The airport created a task force to be able to propose community solutions to the FAA to address some of these noise impacts. So this task force so far has heard testimony from residents and communities. And a little bit of feedback from the FAA and the airport. And that's pretty much it. But it was created by the airport. They asked me and the other elected officials who represent the valley at the city and federal level to be a part of this, which we did. And I have said from day one, the first time I was approached by the first constituent about this, that one solution that will not be acceptable to me is to take a concentrated impact from one neighborhood and move that concentrated impact to another neighborhood. But what is fair is spreading it out. Let people not face an undue consequence, a concentrated impact from our proximity to the airport. In some ways the proximity to the airport is a good thing. I'm sure you all love going to Burbank rather than going to LAX. It's undeniably an enormous contributor to the local economy of the San Fernando Valley. But folks, Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena run that airport. A part of the runway of that airport is in my district, and I have no vote over what that airport does. It's run by a JPA of those three cities. The city of Los Angeles has no participation in that. And the reason that that's relevant is because what you've seen is after 25 or 30 or more years of people fighting over airport noise, is that Burbank and Glendale and Pasadena don't suffer the impact of that airport. The people of the San Fernando Valley do. Because all of the flights are taking off out of that, southbound runway, banking to the right. Even if they're ending up going east, they're banking to the west and flying over our communities. So one thing that I'm going to propose in the task force, and in fact one thing I proposed to the city council today, was why don't we start looking at eastbound banking? Why don't we see that they bank over Burbank and Glendale and Pasadena instead of over the San Fernando Valley? Now, I'm not an air traffic controller. I'm not saying that I know all the details about how things have to take off out of Burbank Airport. But I do know this. There is an approved departure procedure for that airport, approved by the FAA, that allows planes to do that. And sometimes they do, but not very often, because the westbound, I'm getting into too much detail, but the westbound banking, the banking that you see every day, more often than not, is an RNAV procedure. It's a radio-navigated, automatic, GPS-controlled procedure. So it comes out this way, and they're just more comfortable doing that. The other one is not an RNAV procedure. So I think, why not make it one? And why not spread some of those flights over to the east as well? So that's number one. Number two, get up faster. 1,200, make it 1,500. And that difference alone will make a significant noise mitigation impact if they just take up higher. Now they do that at John Wayne Airport. They do that at San Diego International. They do that at a lot of airports around this country. And in some places, like John Wayne notably, they do it specifically for noise mitigation reasons. And that's the agreement that they have at John Wayne. So one of my proposals is going to be, can we just get them up higher, faster? And then there will be other steps that we can take, the goal of which will be to reduce noise impact as much as we can, or mitigate it. I shouldn't say reduce. Mitigate it as much as we can for everyone, and spread it around in a fairer way. That's my goal, and so that's what we're working towards. Now I got to tell you, I can't guarantee that anything will come from this task force at all, because ultimately the FAA calls the shots.
Congress calls the shots?
Congress calls the shots over the FAA,
We don't get the answers.
theoretically,
Go to
theoretically, but the city has zero leverage over the FAA.
The state.
Except for this. I will just say this, since it's just us here. The replacement terminal at the Hollywood Burbank Airport is the crown jewel that the airport has sought, and that the FAA really wants the airport to build for decades. They've been working towards this. And I think that the city of Los Angeles needs to take a hard look at what our position should be with regard to the impacts of the replacement terminal if we're not going to get any cooperation in any other way with regard to noise impacts. And I think the two are related. And I'm going to make the case that they're related.
Is that on LA property, the new terminal?
No. I offered.
Yeah.
I said, listen, if you want to build it, we have property that's adjacent to the airport, and if Burbank won't allow it, we'll do it. Of course, it would be with some strings attached, and they didn't take me up on it. But no, it's all Burbank property, Burbank-owned property, with the exception of about a third of one of the candidates, which is in Sun Valley. It's in LA. So anyway, that's what we're seeking to do. I would hope that you let Congressman Sherman know how important this issue is. Congressman Cardenas, they've both been participating in this task force, as have our two senators. But, you know, ultimately, this is part of a nationwide program Congress has been pushing for, called Next Gen, to try to concentrate departures and arrivals and flight paths in a narrower and narrower area so they can be GPS guided. And the argument, it's maybe a legitimate argument, is that by doing this, they can enhance safety and efficiency and so on. I think a real driving part of this is actually they just want to hire fewer air traffic controllers. They want to save money for the federal government. They want to save money for the airlines. And to me, that's not a good enough reason to unjustifiably and disproportionately impact certain neighborhoods over others. So anyway, that's a little bit on the airport. So with that, I think I better, let me just make sure that so we can go to questions if you'd like, because I think I overstayed.
Anything you can do to address helicopter noise as well, since we're talking about?
That is a great question, and there's, to some extent, with some helicopter noise, yes, but not the big problems. And here's what I mean by that. You know, some of our helicopter noise is that we want, right? Because if they're up there for a reason, and it's safe, and it's an incredible force multiplier to have the helicopters, and it makes police officers safer, and it makes us safer. They circle. The news helicopters, to me, are the biggest problem because they park. And I'm sure you've all experienced this, where over the freeway, or if there's some story that is happening in the neighborhood, somebody is, I don't know, has a hostage, or somebody stuck up a 7-Eleven or something. So the news helicopter just sits there for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and you feel that impact of it. Yeah. So we actually took a run at that with Congressman Sherman, actually, who kind of led the effort. And in fact, Congressman Berman was still in office, so it was the two of them together. You might remember, we went over to Van Nuys to try to do this. And the answer was essentially no. Sorry, you don't control the airspace. The FAA controls the airspace. And the media told us basically, don't interfere with our First Amendment rights to deliver the news. And so it kind of went nowhere. But I agree with you. In terms of, quality of life impact, those parked helicopters are the
Can you
worst.
make them pool and share the information?
Are we
I
allowed
can't
as an
make the
audience
press-
to have our cards read rather than
I
the
can't
board?
make the
We've
press
all given
do-
questions, but
That's
we'd like
sorry,
a
just,
chance.
hold on.
But we'd like a chance, and the
You'll
board's
get
asking
a
questions.
chance, you'll get a chance.
But the board's asking questions.
The board that, Miss, I don't know your name, the process is that the board is allowed to ask questions, and we get the stakeholder questions. That's
Okay,
just
this
the way
is
the
my
meeting
fourth
is
time
run.
that we never
You'll
got
get
cards
a
read.
chance, I
I
promise.
appreciate it, thank you.
I think that's as much as I can say.
Jeff, any other questions, Jenny?
Actually, I have a suggestion. I've only been to one of the meetings, and I think where improvement is needed is greater education of people north of the line.
Can you speak louder, please?
Jenny, stand up.
I'm sorry. I said I have a suggestion. I think greater education is needed for people north of the 101. Just from the one meeting I attended, the majority of the people seem to be the people south of the 101 and in the hillsides.
You're talking about the airport, right?
The airport, that's what we're talking about, okay. The FAA is controlled by the federal government, okay? It's budgeted, it's appropriated money. The congressmen, you guys, the local people, the four city council or 3 city council members on the board, on the task force, are getting dumped on, right, from everyone, okay? The Congress people should be the ones that are leading the charge on whatever. And I
That's
think you guys on the task force, the local, should be insisting that they sit up to the plate. Now, you're there because you're an elected official and you're showing up. right to write a letter to tell people what is going on. It's going to affect them, no matter, what the FAA eventually does, but they should know about what you guys are doing. No one does. Most people don't have the time to go home, and if you're not looking at the FAA, they're not looking, it's not all over the news. They got their own lives, they're doing their thing. Unless someone tells you about it, you're not gonna know anything's happening.
Great point.
People need to be educated, and you guys, the local guys on the town, should insist that the feds step up to the plate more and do something about educating the public.
That's a great point, and I'd be happy to try to do that, but I think if you do that, they will respond to you as the voters more than they do
I
to
get so
me.
hard, Mr. London, his sister telling me the things he does for his district and all the people he helps. It's great. But, he can write about issues too. And the same, so you have Schiff, you have Cartledge, you have Sherman, and you have Luke, 4 of them.
Yeah.
So all of them are involved.
Agreed. So call your congressman.
Let's go to, we have a lot of questions, but they all tend to focus on about 4 issues. So this one is not in the items that you spoke about. Ellen Wilhite. Ellen, are you still here?
I'm here.
SB 50. What is the city council's position on SB 50 and what are we doing about it?
So for those who don't know, well, I'm sure you all know, SB 50 is this effort by Senator Wiener of San Francisco to try to increase housing stock by increasing density. And we're now in, I think, like the 3rd iteration of this. The other 2 have been killed. And the city council, I think unanimously, voted to oppose both of the previous versions. And we wrote letters and we lobbied against it because, in my view, it would really have not only taken away local control, but it would have essentially destroyed the very notion of a single-family neighborhood, a single-family residential neighborhood. Now, we have enough state mandates right now that are already doing that. The ADU or legislation, for example. In fact, now, I don't know if you know this, but you can actually, by state law, you're entitled to have 2 ADUs in your property. So now we're up to triplexes in single-family, residential neighborhoods. So I am really, I get that there's a real problem that he's trying to address. I will give him that. We have a housing shortage in the state of California. We need more housing. But it doesn't need to be every place. And the city of Los Angeles, frankly, we're doing our part. Other surrounding cities are not doing their part. And if that's the problem you want to solve, then focus on that. But when you look at how much housing is being built in Los Angeles already, how much density there already is in Los Angeles, how we have transit-oriented communities already in Los Angeles, we're investing billions of dollars in new transit, and with that comes more transit-oriented development. We're doing our part already. So my view is, don't from Sacramento cram down our throats a requirement that we have to take every single family residential neighborhood and turn it into multifamily. That's not right. It tears apart the nature of communities, their character, and it's not the right way to address a housing shortage. Let local governments figure out how best to balance the needs of their constituents. So there's a new version now. I understand he's made, I haven't read it, I haven't seen an analysis of it yet. I understand he's given some greater latitude to local governments in the latest version. But, whatever it is, my view still is, you guys take care of state policy and let us take care of land use here in Los Angeles because we represent the people that are impacted by it.
What can we do to stop it?
Well, look, your state assembly member, I think, is very like-minded with me on this. Assemblymember Nazarian has not been supportive of this, but I think, Senator Hertzberg and the assembly member and others that you may have a relationship with, look, you got to be heard on this. Don't just count on a city council resolution being the thing that they need to hear from real voters. They need to hear a lot from people who they represent. And you know, the sad truth is, you're all here and very engaged in your neighborhood. In most places, people are not so engaged, and people are kind of apathetic about things, which means that people don't speak up that much. And the interested parties, the advocacy organizations, the housing groups and so on, they can organize lots of people, they get heard, and a lot of times, people who are just going about their ordinary lives and care about their neighborhood, but you know, aren't speaking up about it, they get overlooked. So you gotta make your views heard. Write a letter, make an appointment, make a phone call to your state legislators, please, to
So I'm going to try to get to 2 or 3 more questions, and then we've got a time frame on the meeting. So this ties in with that. From Paulette Stokes, can you tell us a little bit more details about the rent control laws that the city is either pushing or?
No, so this is a state law that came in to try to restrict spiking rents that were happening in some places that don't have rent control. Here in Los Angeles, excuse me, we do. And so that was a state mandate to restrict. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head all the details of it, but I think it was to restrict rent increases to 5% above CPI. I see Doug nodding his head that I got that right. So that's good. And this was a state law that took effect January 1st. So what happened as a result of that state law going into effect January 1st is that a lot of landlords rushed to raise rent before the effective date because they knew they wouldn't be able to afterwards. So there were places that were in non-rent control buildings in Los Angeles, and this happened throughout the state, where rents were, you know, in some cases doubled. You know, people were getting these massive rent increases, which of course, you know, nobody could really deal with if your rent all of a sudden increased by that much. So people were losing their homes, and that was okay with this small group of landlords who were doing this because once they had a vacancy, they could do whatever they want with it. So, so we had an interim measure to try to help some of those people who were being, you know, basically, dumped on and losing their homes.
Real quick, okay. I just need someone, I need some documentation for my neighbors, either the Empire USA developer.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's follow up afterwards,
Yeah,
and then I can deal with your specifics.
People may not know this, but over half of the stakeholders in Valley Village are renters. And it's growing much more rapid than ownership. So with all the new apartment buildings, that's a big deal. This is from Mike Marcosa, and I guess this is a tangible example of what you're talking about with SB 50. There's a 5-story building going up right against a residential neighborhood on Chandler at Carpenter. And I know we're wrestling with that, but what can we do to fight back on that? It's a 5-story building right next to a 1-story single-family home.
Yeah, and
It's not right, it's 14 units, 5 stories tall, they're very small.
Is it an apartment or a condo?
I don't know, it's a kind of an apartment. And then the second part of that issue is the vacant building that's there now with all the squatters that are tearing it up and doing things in it that shouldn't be.
so the building that's going to be demoed, you're saying, has squatters, and that's going to be demoed and replaced by this much bigger building?
5 stories, very small space, looking down into the garbage and the windows and see
It's an SBAC.
Yeah, see, and you know, unfortunately, with the state density laws, SB 1818, which would be made worse by SB 50 and some of these others, that overrides a lot of our ability to deal with that, but also, so do our community plans. And this is another reason why the community plan updates are so important, because in a lot of places, we've had these sort of zoning disparities, where one side of a block is zoned for multifamily, the other right behind them is zoned for single-family residential. And so the result is you get a 3-story building behind you looking at your backyard, and it's as
tolerable. 5
5 is,
3 is not tolerable.
and especially when there's no buffer.
Well, and there's not enough parking spaces for the proposed amount of units, so we know what's gonna happen. They're
So-
all gonna be parking on the streets, and we already have parking.
So Chandler and Carpenter, do you happen to know the project? Doug?
I'll find it and send it.
Can I just follow up with my staff about that specific project? But the empty building, I hope we're already addressing that, because I've had situations like that all over, where somebody's gonna build a new building, and in the meantime, you know, the least desirable part of our homeless community usually finds their way in there. They're cooking meth and doing other things, burning the place, stealing everything, and causing real neighborhood impacts. And a lot of times we've been effective in just forcing the developer, whether they're ready to build or not, to repair. So,
With the board's permission, I'm gonna see if we can put off some of our other action items, because this is a privilege to have the councilman here, so we'll try to get some more questions, if that's all right. Michael Gator, or Gator, are you here? The question is about Colfax school boundaries and diversity, something you didn't touch on, but you didn't write your question, so would you ask the question again?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I apologize. I didn't know you were going to be here today, and I didn't know that you were going to talk about some of the things that you talked about, which actually touch on what I'm going to ask you about, which is, in the beginning, you talked about the redistricting or redoing the boundaries of Valley Village, that you guys are in the process of doing that right now.
the community plan
Community
update,
plan.
yeah. Won't change the
We're not
boundaries, just to
changing
be clear, it's
the
not changing the boundaries, but what it will do is change the land use patterns
Right.
within there so that it meets the current.
I'll try to make this as brief as
Yeah.
possible, because I wasn't prepared for this many people. But when we first moved here, right around 10 years ago, we did so because we were, well, initially we couldn't afford to buy a house. Economically, we weren't in a position to do it. And even though our economic position has changed, where we live is great. We moved there 10 years ago because we were under the impression that we were within the boundaries of Colfax School District, right at Reddington and Radford. And after we had our son, he's now ready to go to kindergarten, and I called the school to set up, and they said, well, what's your address? And I told them the address, and she says, well, you're right on the red line. I don't know if you guys are familiar with red lining or not. I don't know why they chose that color, but. And she said, well, you're just on the wrong side of the street. If you're on this side of the street of Weddington, you would be in, but you're on that side of the street of Weddington. So then, and I had some things to pass out for you guys to see the boundaries, but I don't think it's appropriate with the same people. But if you know anything about the boundaries of Colfax Elementary, it touches tremendously, it touches on exactly what you were talking about, which is the, I'm going to blank, sorry guys. It touches on what you were just talking about, and it, with the single family home versus the multi-family home. The red line that's drawn for Colfax boundaries just simply only carves out an area that is only homeowners. It literally goes to Weddington and Radford. It stops at Weddington, goes down to Colfax, and then goes out to Chandler, and then all the way down to Tehunga, and then all the way back to Moore Park, and then all the way up to.
I gotta ask you to get to the question so we can get more in, but I'm sorry for the question.
Who sets the boundary?
It's okay.
Boundaries were pulled in years ago because of all the apartments that were built in schools over.
And the boundary changes, right?
So I can address this briefly. The boundaries, the catchment area of a particular school are determined by the Board of Education, or specifically the LAUSD administration. And the way that they draw those, I don't know about the specific lines, but the reason that they sometimes expand and contract is because of the population of the community changing, and so the number of students enrolling in a particular school going up. Carpenter, for example, same exact situation. People bought in that neighborhood specifically
so that they could go to Carpenter. And then all of a sudden, the boundaries started, constricting like this, and they found all of a sudden they're going to a different school. And the reason for that is Colfax, Carpenter, a lot of the other really terrific schools that we have are massively overcrowded. Because for that very reason, people are trying to move into the area to send their kids to school there. And as density in the area increases, you have more population in the area. That means that boundaries are going to constrict even more in order to keep enrollment below, 1,000 students or something. It's a real problem, and it's a real problem for sense of community, for property values, for diversity for sure, and honestly, for the concept of a neighborhood school. Because we're not building a lot more elementary schools right now. We're just, trying to constrict the areas more and more, which means that people have to think, well, am I going to send my kid to a magnet school then, or to a charter school someplace, or a private school, which means that the whole neighborhood school concept that I enjoyed when I was being raised here gets kind of torn apart. So it's a real problem. Unfortunately, it's not a problem that the city has any role in, because it's a LAUSD Board of Education. That I don't know. But that would be my advice to suggest, is that go to the regional LAUSD office for this area and see what the rules are about that. Especially if you're a long-time resident. I mean, there's a fairness aspect to that just doesn't seem right. You lived there all that time, and you didn't move the boundaries. That doesn't seem right.
Your school board member, Mr. Schmerlson, is running for re-election, and this is a great time to go. Ask for a meeting. Don't just call. Ask for a meeting. You deserve the chance to meet.
It is, and he's a great guy, and he tries to be a problem solver.
And they say that they have some kind of boundary, but after talking to them, it's a complete joke.
May I say something about that? So being a mom from this neighborhood itself, it actually impacts not just you that may live a little bit outside, but it actually impacts us, especially if we live across the street from the school. And that's the whole reason why they're building that building. When my daughters were there 6 years ago, that's when actually they redid the boundaries, because we could no longer take any more students. Our own kids living across the street had to go to Riverside Elementary. And that's how it all started. That's why they had to read these boundaries, so we could no longer house even our own kids in the immediate area. But maybe once the building is done, they'll be able to house more children, and that would be an answer. But for now, even I know that some of us, we've had kids here, had to have taken our, living 2 streets down the street, had to take our kids to Riverside for the first or second year, because they just couldn't use them.
All right, we're going to move on. I'm trying to get a couple more in before we have to move. Stephanie Blair, this is a traffic question, but I can't quite read your writing. Stephanie, where are you?
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Can you just ask it? I'm sorry. It's my eyes. I'm kidding.
On Chandler and what is it, Agnes? There's a light, a traffic light that stays solid red.
Oh, yeah.
And we would really like it if it could flash, because people are starting to barrel through.
It stays solid red on the Agnes parcel.
To the bus line. And
So what can we do?
there's another crosswalk that flashes.
It's 2 red lights that are together, and they don't change in sync, so if you get stuck with one red, it's onto your trip.
Oh.
And, yeah, we need to do something about that.
Who's over here?
Just go to red and then go flash.
Sir, I don't know your name, and I apologize. Can you tell me based on which question you had to ask?
I will follow up.
Because you want me to ask it, or you don't want to ask it?
Well, no, go ahead. I don't know who you are. Did you raise your hand?
Robert, I'm happy to ask my question.
Yes, please.
Okay. I tried for 4 different meetings to have a question with you, and I've gone to the homeless meetings where no one was able to ask any questions. I'm at the last meeting and no questions. But I'm a 37-year resident of Valley Village. 30 of those years we've waited for that wall, and by the way, I appreciate so much of what you're doing for us. But none of that wall matters with this unbelievable airplane situation. It is so beyond, it's going to ruin this area. All the money you're talking about, we're all going to move. because it's gonna be every 30 seconds. Now, I've been involved for 15 years, going to meetings before you were involved. Just so you know, in the 40s and 50s, planes went the direction of Burbank, Pasadena, and Glendale.
Yes, they
What
did.
happened was, they took over the board, and there was a whole time of graft and corruption where they had the same people that were on the airport authority were on the board of the same board members. They had to get those people out because they were only voting to stop airplanes from going that way. Now, we have, it's all about, it's going to Studio City. That's going to be the big problem. We're fighting with them. They've somehow taken away the real conversation, which you brought up in that last meeting, and I thank you for it. But they can fly that way. And you said about the mountains and all this is the same thing. The other thing you said, which isn't accurate, is they're saying that the planes in their area near the mountains are having to fly, they get more sound there. But it's not true because the planes are accelerating. By the time they get near those mountains, they're higher. So the thing is, when you think about schools and churches in our area and our homes, this is going to destroy our area. The wall doesn't matter anymore. We will not have, we'll get a little bit of silence from that wall and unbelievable airplanes. And I've lived with it ever since I've been in our house. But I thank you for helping with that. And I want to throw in one more thing because it's important. Regarding this homeless situation, when I went to the last meeting, we were all very intent on helping these people that are in this terrible situation. And there are these people that live in their cars and have these awful situations. But a lot of these people are transients from other states. They're meth addicts and heroin addicts. They live in our streets to panhandle. They don't have this problem in Beverly Hills. Why? As my wife has a sign here, they have a sign in Beverly Hills where it says specifically to not give money to the panhandle.
Give it to a charity.
Give it to a charity.
It's a very nice
But-
sign, but I sent it to your office, and your office said, we don't go this direction.
We won't do that here. We have to stop these people from living on the street in their filth. And they're living as drug addicts, as you said. But we have to do something more than say there's 200 beds. These people are not all good people. Some of them are really bad people. And a lot of them are mental issues as well on that street. But, you know, they're hoarders. And we can't just allow this to happen. This area between the airport and the homelessness, it's going down the tubes. And you're talking about all this money we're making. This is unbelievable. And I'm sorry if I'm passionate about it. I just wanted to get it out, that they can fly that way. And if you're going to fight the fight, we're going to lose out to those people in Sherman Oaks. And they're just going to come over this area and they don't have to. This whole thing about the GPS is a joke. That's not true. This is Glendale, Pasadena, and Burbank, stopping planes from going the direction they can go. And that's my message. Thank you. And to all our people, I want to all our buildings, we need to be heard.
And in addition, what happened to us having rights as property landowners? I pay property taxes.
Why do we pay property taxes?
It seems like the homeless have way much more rights than we do.
Stand up, stand up.
I just feel like,
Stand up.
I pay my property taxes, I get my trash cans off out of the street at the appropriate time, but I'm not allowed to keep them there. But now, since I have homeless people who are allowed to lay in the street, and then when you do call very nice police officers, they can't do anything because they're not committing a crime. I don't understand when the homeless somehow got more rights than the landowners who pay the taxes.
Well, I can tell you, there have been multiple federal lawsuits brought on by advocacy groups.
I've actually heard that.
And that actually has changed the law and the balance of rights. And
Well, what would happen if we stopped paying our
stop paying our
Why do we stop
and-
paying our taxes?
so one example I use all the time is we have building and safety going out and dealing with people who are living in a home and fining them and, you know, imposing other penalties because they're hoarders in their home, right? And yet you can see these sort of massive accumulations of things that a homeless person might have, and especially a person who has a mental illness, who, you know, who basically is taking up an entire sidewalk, an entire bridge, or something like that. And we're left by these court decisions saying, no, you know, they have their, you know, property rights and so on, same as a house person is. And conceptually, I agree with that. Yes, of course they have the same constitutional rights that we do. But you have to have order on the streets, too. You have to, and I always caution people not to confuse the issue of homelessness and criminality. They are not one and the same. You are not a criminal because you are homeless, but also, if you are a criminal, I don't care if you're homeless. You should be punished for your crimes. So we have to, as a society, I think, distinguish these two social phenomena because, but the problem is what you're talking about are the things that don't rise to the level of crime, but ruin a whole neighborhood.
Drugs are crime. Methamphetamine.
Well, they used to be. They used to be. Yeah, they used to be until basically we decriminalized all of the ways that we used to get people, use the threat of criminal penalties to get people into treatment. That's all out the window.
But they won't go into a shelter. These 200 beds, these people aren't.
So, wait, the thing, when we talk about I can't let the back and forth happen.
Well, they did over there, that's why.
Well, he's got staff here tonight, and I think that you've covered a couple things in your points. And
I appreciate it.
And I appreciate your passion about it, and I appreciate your being engaged about it.
Tony, thank you for
I hear you.
Yes. Last question, and then there's about 8 forms that I did not get to. We're going to give these all to the council office, and I will promise you that I will stay on top of them to get back to you. Mr. Ziskin and Mr. Martinez, there weren't questions on there, so if I can get you to write your questions down, the other ones I have for questions. Glenn, and then we'll wrap up. Yes.
Councilman Krikorian, we've devoted a lot of resources and time and energy and civic engagement with the airport noise issue. And obviously it's an important issue that we all care about, and we appreciate what you're doing. Homelessness is maybe a more serious issue. When can we have a task force for the East San Fernando Valley? We have a lot of great resources here. We have a lot of people doing a lot of great work, including Officer Benvenidez. Why aren't we sitting together at regular meetings and figuring out solutions instead of talking and talking and talking? Well, getting the right people in the right room together.
Yeah. So there are a lot of those discussions and groups going on. Some neighborhood councils have selected their own homelessness task forces that they're working on community-specific solutions and policy suggestions and so on. You hit upon the key point when you said getting the right people in the rooms together, because that continues, even within the city government, that continues to be a problem. And we were talking,
I met with someone at the mayor's office, and there was something like 5 different departments of the city that deal with homelessness.
At least, I would say it's more than that. So, and I will give the mayor a lot of credit on this point. He created something called the United Homelessness Response Center, UHRC. And that, at least within government, that's exactly the idea. Bring together fire department, building safety, planning, all of the groups that might, the city attorney, LAPD, everybody who might touch a piece of this for the city are part of this command center, so that there's a more unified response to it. But even with that, the city's bureaucracy is mind-boggling. If I told you how hard it has been for my office to open this navigation center, just dealing with the DWP, your head would explode. To deal with DWP bureaucrats who are saying, well, you can't build that here because someday we might want to use that for something else. And for me to try to convey to not just them, but everybody in the city bureaucracy, we're in a crisis. If we had an 8.2 earthquake and we had 35,000 people out of their homes because of the earthquake, within a month we'd have Quonset huts and everything else set up all over the city. We'd have people housed. The FEMA would be here. Every government, every general manager of every department would be spending all of their time solving that problem. But because this is the drip, drip, drip of the, increasing problem, and because, I mean, let's face it, there's an element of this too that, you know, maybe we're not as sympathetic to this problem because we don't feel that it's just people who got knocked out of their house by an earthquake, you know. As a society, sometimes we do some blaming too, and saying, well, you know, shouldn't be a drum thing.
But would that be?
But you are 100% right about getting people on the same page, and I wish I had a better answer for you about why we can't seem to make that happen better in this massive city bureaucracy that we are. That's why I told you about what, I mean, yes, I get it, 200 shelter beds. In the big scheme of things, that's a small thing, but it's the piece that I can do. And so what I'm doing is focusing on this district. And yeah, I get sucked into the larger policy decisions and the budget and all that, and I spend my time doing that too. But my focus is, let's deliver some things that we can control in the district, and that maybe that will create some examples for other people. We have a jobs program right now too. In fact, a couple of them. One, sorry, I'm so sorry, but we worked with Chrysalis to create a pilot program for the East Valley, where people who have housing vouchers get job training. So you have, because those two things weren't coordinated before. So you might have a housing voucher to get housing, but you don't have a job, so you can't keep your housing. Or conversely, you might get your job, but if you're still homeless, you're not going to keep your job because you can't take a shower and change your clothes. So we said, okay, well, let's find a way to give people soft skills, teach them about how you dress to get a job. You know, you got to show up on time. You got to, you know, not swear at your boss. You got to, you know, some of those things. Teach them the soft skills. Get them job training, and coordinate housing vouchers for those people too. So it's a unified approach to solving this. That's one thing we're doing. We have working with Clean Streets, Clean Stars. I think some of you may have seen this, but we have a group of people who are mostly formerly homeless that are being organized by this nonprofit to go around and do community beautification stuff, litter cleanup, weed abatement, graffiti paint outs, and stuff like that. And while they're doing that, they encounter homeless people. And on a peer-to-peer kind of way, they can say, hey, you want to make some money today? Come and join us. Just for today. Just for today. Come on out, make a little bit of money, work with us. And they connect them then. You know, sometimes the ones that are willing can be connected with services. In the meantime, they're getting a little cash so they're not panhandling, and they're doing something productive for the community as well. So, you know, we can do stuff like that, and I would really urge you, I apologize, I don't know if you have a specified homelessness task force?
The board, we deal with it all together.
Yeah, you do. So, some of the others have done kind of a stakeholder task force. I'd love to, you know, support anything that you want to do like that here. We're struggling just to get the city all rowing in the same direction, and then getting our county friends also along with it.
It would seem like the situation you're describing for DWP, it would be a lot harder for DWP to create all these issues or raise all these issues if they're sitting in front of a room full of homeowners and residents that need these kind of solutions. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I know we all have task force, but just like with the airport, when the public is involved, asking questions, raising issues, and there's an amount of accountability that can help propel things forward maybe a little faster.
So it's a really good point, and let me just say, you know, I had a big town hall meeting on homelessness for Valley College, and we brought a lot of people together for that. I agree with you. What I don't think is productive, if it just becomes a thing where people come and then amp each other up to start yelling and saying, and nobody's developing solutions. That's not a productive thing to move the ball forward, and it's not a productive thing, frankly, for our sense of community. So, you know, you want to, like you said, get the right people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and get stuff done. And
so we're going to move.
Look for those opportunities.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you having me. So, we're going to take a chance to respond to your questions. have it in writing, I'll make sure that our staff takes them and we respond to you by other means. So thank you all very much for having me. Happy New Year.
Okay, we move on to the financial report. Ms. Apple.
I wanted to work for my time and we were tonight. No, it's not ready.
So we'll table next month. Got it. Thank you very much. Jess probably walked out. Is Emma here? Emma Taylor's not here, okay. We'll move on to, let's see, Raj. Do you have any? Go right ahead.
Hello everyone, my name is Osvaldo Ramirez. I'm with the Office of Congressman Tony Cameron. Good evening. Today I just wanted to give you guys a little reminder about the constituent services that our office provides. Our office can assist you with federal agencies such as Social Security, USPS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, Department of Veteran Affairs, to name a few. Example of a case, we had a veteran who had a claim, pending claim. The claim would have helped him get a reward of over $5,000. And this constituent was at risk of becoming homeless. He received an eviction notice. We helped him communicate with the Department of Veteran Affairs to expedite that claim and get him that money just in time to communicate with his landlord and prevent the eviction from happening. So that's just an example of the federal assistance that we can provide you. In regards to the airplane noise task force, I did want to let you guys know that I did bring some cards. I'm not the field rep who goes to the meetings. I'll leave some cards at the table and I'll be more than happy to connect you with Leah Gonzalez. She attends those meetings periodically. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions.
Hi, yes, I've talked to Leah. She's very helpful, by the way. And Mr. Cardenas has been maybe the only, I would say, sympathetic member that I could identify on the panel. I realize the chair is probably, she has to be neutral. She's part of the mayor program. But there was a lot that was skipped over tonight. Yes, sir.
Are you starting your presentation time now?
No, I'm asking a question.
Can you ask him outside? Do you mind?
Okay.
If you don't mind, Paul, that would be very helpful.
Okay, but
because I know
you skipped over us in the Q&A, Tony. That's inexcusable.
You're next.
We were on the Q&A from Mr. Krikorian.
Okay, I did not skip over anybody. We got as many questions as we could, and we spent a good deal of the time discussing the airport, and I was going to use the time that you and Beth
there's a
were here.
lot of incomplete information.
Okay.
Okay.
We still have the audience here, and you're
Okay.
next on the
Good.
agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. I'll leave my cards over there.
Beth and Paul.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi. Do you want me to come up there so everybody doesn't?
Whatever you think is good for you.
Move there. Hi, Jeff. Hi, everybody. My name is Beth Fulton. I am the current president of the Valley Village Homeowners Association. Hi, Julie. So Paul and I gave a presentation last week at the Burbank Airport Task Force. And Tony, is this loud enough, Jeff? Perfect. Tony asked if we give you guys a little rundown. So the 5-minute version is mostly what Mr. Krikorian said. I personally was very pleased with what I heard him say this evening. It sounded like his intention is to represent Valley Village and to go ahead and take some of the recommendations that we made, which was to share the noise. Our 3 primary recommendations, the task force is set up to hear recommendations from community groups. There were probably 8 community groups that gave presentations over the course of 6 task force meetings. We were the only one who said we don't want any more traffic. The other 7 or 8 groups said send it all north was essentially their solution, and we were the only group from the north, if you will, that stood up to say, yeah, we don't want that traffic.
So we had 3 recommendations. One was we wanted to make sure that that task force was not just representing the North, but actually engaging them, making sure that they're aware of the problem.
Representing the South.
Well, no, what I mean is, there are task force members who sit on the task force who represent the North, but instead of sitting on a task force, prepared to take a phone call or answer a question, our push was go out and talk to those folks. Make sure they know what's going to happen if air traffic changes.
By the north, you mean north of the 101?
Correct. We also requested a strategic environmental assessment for all impacted areas. And lastly, we requested technical analysis from the pilot air traffic control to guarantee safety. The big picture to all of that is we are requesting that everyone share the traffic. That there is no community that gets a carve out and gets to be noise-free. If we all enjoy the airport, then within the realm of safety, we all have to share the burden of the noise. Paul, anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say, I support the resolution that Mr. Krikorian introduced today about having the FAA, requiring the FAA to look into the feasibility of eastbound takeoffs. That's a great idea, and we're all for it if it can be done safely. And what Mr. Krikorian did not say, there are serious safety issues involved in that. For one thing, the wind direction has to be right, all right? The planes have to take off into the wind. I'm very familiar with that. My late stepfather was a naval aviator. He knows all about taking off into the wind. Of course, in his case, it was easier because he just turned the aircraft carrier. But you don't have a turntable here. But the so it needs the lift. The other thing is that 99.9 there's high terrain. 99.9% of the time, a plane isn't going to have a problem getting over the mountains. What could happen, though, if a plane loses an engine, it may not have the power to clear the terrain. That would be catastrophic. Maybe there's like a 0.001% chance, but you know, that would be just the number of people who would be killed would be just outrageous. The other thing is that planes, when they take off towards the east, start to bump up against the Ontario airspace. You know, we're not just an isolated little bubble of airspace. There's all sorts of areas, all kind of like rotating circles of planes that require careful monitoring. So there is a safety issue. If it can be done safely, fantastic. But I think under the best of conditions, it's going to be limited, and we have to, we have to do what we can on days when we can take advantage of it. Fantastic. The other thing is that, in getting back to a point that Ginny made about having congressional involvement, I agree with her. We sometimes talk to each other, but Mr. Krikorian and actually the whole panel is in violation of their own bylaws. Their bylaws specifically say that they have to reach out to not only the affected areas now, but areas that will be potentially affected. That has not happened. I've seen from Mr. Krikorian exactly 2 emails, not 2 emails, 2 newsletters. One that announced the formation of the panel, and one that talked about the suit that they're filing against the FAA. In neither of those emails did you see any language about if this happens.
Stand up!
Hold on, Paul, I have to move this meeting along.
Okay.
What can we do to help you guys?
Yes,
Paul
thank
is the
you.
past
So-
president of the homeowners. Beth is the current president of the homeowners. They have taken the reins on this because we have so many strings on us that we can't be as active as we want to be, but we can support them. So tell us what we can do.
Here's what you need to know. We have to keep showing up. So Studio City and communities south of the 101 show up at these task force meetings in droves. There are a couple hundred people. We have to show up too, because voices matter. Bodies in the seats matter. Those people scream and shout. Excuse me. Can you believe all this talking? I know that. These people scream and shout and heckle. We don't need to heckle, but we need to show up, because the task force is tasked with making recommendations. If you attend a task force meeting, or if you go back to the Burbank Airport Task Force Noise website and you watch any of the videos, you will see that it very clearly looks like the task force is embracing and leaning towards solving Studio City's problem. That's not what we want. We want them to solve Valley Village's problem at the same time. So please consider showing up. The next task force meeting is in February. I know that you all will hear about it from the neighborhood council.
That's
Yes,
what I was
loud
saying.
mouth.
So what I was saying is, we are trying to have it on our website as well, so people have some place to go and find when these meetings are.
Thank you.
So,
Trying to
thank you,
support
Bev,
you.
thank you,
Yes,
Paul,
thank
thank
you,
you, Jeff. I will say this, at the last meeting, the papers, television stations, they were all like, oh, Valley Village was here. It's because of these two. They got up and they spoke for more than 20 minutes. Madam President Fulton said SHIT on television, which was pretty cool. But we want everybody to go, we need you to go, but when you get there, sign in. Let them know you're there. The strength is in the presence, not just the verbal presence, but the written record that you were there, and email afterwards saying, my name is Tony, I was at the meeting, and I support Valley Village. But if we do this, there's only 2 more meetings, is that correct?
Two more, correct.
We need to be there at both of those meetings, February and March. So thank you both for what you're doing.
One thing, Beth, repeat what you said at the meeting regarding your ideal dream, because that's the sentence that everyone should use when they contact the elected leaders. My ideal for the solution of this.
I don't recall what I said.
Oh, so sorry. It was something about, I dream that the least amount of the,
Well, basically, I think I said my fantasy is that the least number of people are impacted by the least amount of noise. But the reality is, the only solution is to share. And so far, what we've heard at 6 task force meetings is, we don't want it, not in my backyard, send it over there.
And we've heard the representatives say, stop the noise, stop torturing.
The dangerous part is we've heard the entire task force seem to lean into what they're hearing from Studio City and Sherman Oaks and Encino.
But that changed at the last meeting. I think it's
I
what you
think
guys
that we
did.
helped to change the narrative, but we've created some momentum, and our key is going to be keeping the pressure on, because if we only showed up once, we can be easily forgotten.
Yeah, so we will keep the pressure on and work with you all to get the word out. So thank you very much for taking the time. Barbara. Where's Barbara? Hi, Barbara.
Hi. Thank you all. So I'm going to try to be positive with all this negativity tonight. So, my name is Barbara Javits. I'm the 3rd director of the North Hollywood Interfaith Food Pantry. I hope that many in the room are familiar with our organization. We've been in existence for 37 years, serving this community. And our mission is to both serve the unmet needs of people in our community and mentor both youth, and now we're mentoring the millennials, to create a true culture of compassion and caring. We're a coalition of 14 faith-based organizations and 100% volunteer staff. We've aligned ourselves with No Home Alliance, who has a very aggressive drop-in center for people experiencing homelessness. We have a partner in Food Forward, who harvests fruit from fruit trees in your neighborhoods. We have partnerships with schools, both public schools and private schools, and we have partnerships with many community organizations. We distribute food twice a week out of the Rear First Christian Church on Moore Park in Colfax, and we inventory all of our food in the temple at Beth Hillel. So to give you a sense of what we're doing, through December 31st of last year, we distributed 11,783 bags of food. So we're distributing 1,000 bags of food. Those bags enabled us to feed 26,348 people. And just to give you a sense of who our clients are, about 50% of our clients are people who are experiencing homelessness, and 50% of our clients, unfortunately, are seniors. And we see this every single week. And we have homeless children. So basically, our goals for 2020 are twofold. Number one, we're going to become our own 501c3. My determination letter from the U.S. government is due by March 1st. We're currently a 501c3 as a DBA under Valley Interfaith Council. And secondly, my goal is to ask everybody here to consider having food drives. I run an organization that runs cash negative every single month. And those of you who run businesses know that's a challenge. 100% of our money goes to either food, vehicle maintenance, gas for the vehicles, and that's it. That's where all the money goes. And philanthropy, unfortunately, is a little bit down, or has been down. So I just asked you all to thank you for the time, and please consider either having a food drive as a council, having a food drive in your business, in your schools, as individuals, whatever you'd like to do, because we greatly appreciate it, and because I want to last for another 10 years. Thank you.
To give some money to this cause. We've saved money with not having trolleys, and I think people need to eat. And this is a very,
I completely agree. Can we table that till next month when we balance November, December, and
absolutely.
January?
But
Can
I propose, put it in the
We'll put
note.
it on the agenda for next month.
So what we'll do, I think we will assign this to you. We'll put it in the City Services Committee and let them come back with a motion.
Okay.
So Barbara, we may have to ask you for some data, and we can put together a motion, and it'll be a two-part motion. One, we will need to get involved with helping to coordinate collecting food, donating food, facilitating people getting food to you.
Sure.
And the other thing we can do is an NPG, but we have to you have to have the 501c3 before we can do the NPG. So once you have that, we can also do some financial support possible.
Thank you very much.
So Suzanne, put that on.
There's flyers on the table.
If anybody wants to know what we need, there are flyers on the table. Yes.
Barbara, thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Great. SB 50, very briefly, it has been reworked, as you heard in the conversation. So I'm asking Glenn and Planning and Land Use, we need to get back in front of that. The legislation just came down from state. The Greens office has offered to come and talk to us at a committee level. So we need a motion on it. We have a position on the former, but we don't have it on the revised, so we need to do that. Committee reports, I need you guys to be brief, please. Events and outreach.
Basically, we have our next event coming up. It will be for Earth Day, April 25th, which is the event we do at the park. We shred, we bring in a truck to shred. So we invite everybody to bring all documents and boxes. I think we're limited to 2 boxes.
I asked them for a big truck.
Okay, so we get a big truck, a big shredder, and then you just bring everything you want to get rid of that's documents, and you can't just put in your trash can, and we shred it for you. And we're also, it's April 25th, it's a Saturday.
And Aaron, we're also doing a community cleanup, so we'd like to talk to you about delivering that in.
Yeah, same thing, right? Yes. And then after that, of course, in July, we'll be having our pancake breakfast, same day as the 4th of July parade. And then in August, we'll having our national night out. And then after that, back to Light Up Valley Village in December. So that'll be our
Don't forget, I haven't pinned that down, corner 6, the environmental evaluation.
our gallery, and I think we were the day of the same day as the
No.
That is
I have to check.
Okay, so it's called October.
All right, keep going.
Is there a way to ask people or tell people that we can't take their industry credit or black droppings? Is that really gross, any boxes
It's not just that, we got underwear last year, we got metal pieces, we got dentures, staples. We really can't filter, but we did a good job last year of handing things, we handed them in as dentures back. We hand things back to people that can't be shredded, so we'll try to do that.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll make a note on that, but we can see the flyer, we'll put it on something else. realize that there's certain things that you can't correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Before you get here. And then, of course, after the fall, we'll have the art gallery, and then the Light Up Valley Village in December.
Great. And speaking of Light Up Valley Village, can you give us a quick overview of how we did?
I think it went well this year. I think everybody was happy. If you came between, what was it, 5 to 8, and you were driving down Magnolia on both sides of the street, it was nice and lit. There was a great community vibe. There were people out on the street. There was food. It was just a Valley Village night. And
Shout out to John and Brian.
yeah, we had a great team partner this year in CrossFit. And basically, we thought it was going to rain. There was a 70% chance, so we had made plans ahead of time. We canceled the vans or trolleys we were going to have because we figured no one wanted to be out in the rain on those. We went into CrossFit at the last minute. They volunteered their space. And we house the community organizations there along with our neighborhood council table with our giveaway bags, with our famous little light ups and lights. And it worked out really well. We might have to order some more food next year, but you know, it seemed to work out well. Everybody had a good time. The DJ was great. Santa gave away did more pictures with kids this year than he did in the past.
How much did you spend?
And the total, okay, we went around with this and this, but adding up my figures, and we did return the biggie, we didn't have the vans or the trolley, so that was a big chunk of change. We also returned some major items which we didn't need, and we came in at about $6,600.
Yay.
According to my calculations, so there's still one outstanding to
I think we had the biggest crowd we've ever had, so kudos. All right, city services, Suzanne.
We did meet, we're focusing on ready your neighborhood, especially if anybody felt the earthquake last night at 11:41. You've got to be prepared and have a plan.
Vision, Mark.
All right, on the perennial issue of the historic designation for the trees along Magnolia Boulevard, next to North Hollywood High School, the response to the request for additional information from the Office of Historic Resources from the Planning Department, the subcontractor is now getting underway, here that to provide the additional information. The subcontractor is McKinley, and even though the deadline for the additional information is passed, we are unfortunately advised by the Office of Historic Resources that it really doesn't matter that much. All has to be done is to resubmit the application. It's no big deal, no harm, no foul.
But we'll still keep the pressure on Charlie to get it done soon.
Yes.
Okay,
Did
awesome.
we keep our application and all the materials?
Yeah. Oh, no, we got what we submitted. Yeah.
That letter said if we didn't talk to them, they wouldn't throw that.
I think Mark circumvented that, we're okay. Aaron, we're gonna meet soon. I'll get in touch with you.
And we also discussed, Suzanne, if you want to get involved with this, possibly doing or hopefully doing a writing presentation at one of the upcoming board meetings, so you know what's going on.
And I also have some stats. We reached 837 people with our Facebook post.
Okay.
And 75 people were engaged. So, let's keep that going.
Okay, all right. Jenny, we're coming back to election bylaws. Planning and land use, we are meeting February the, I think it's the 8th. I'm not sure. It's the second Wednesday in February. So if you're interested in coming to that.
It's the 12th.
12th, thank you. Glenn will be chairing, and we have about 12 projects, so it's going to be a long meeting. Community plan? Glenn,
Yes,
anything else?
I just passed out. I have waived my time. That's a handout for the board.
Okay, thank you.
On that side of the board. So we've been active over the past few meetings. This summarizes the feedback that we have provided to the planning, Department of City Planning regarding their proposed guiding principles. So this is, no, but if anyone wants them, you can provide additional.
They're in the notebook, and we can put them on the website. Yeah, and we can put them on the website.
Last call for the restrooms.
Thanks, Rich.
There are other restrooms, just follow the signs at the church office.
The community plan, we are so ahead of the curve on this, and I really want to thank Planning Land Use Mark. They have positioned us well to really be, they heard us, and I appreciate that. Jenny, we're going to come back to the last things in the election bylaws. The gateway sign, you want a quick update on that?
Public comment?
The gateway sign, which was.
You can do public comment.
Hang on one second, I promise I'll come right back. Go ahead, Jenny.
The gateway sign on Laurel Canyon and the 101, which we've had up for, I don't know, a decade or more, was hit for the third time in October of 2018, and it's been in decommission since then. We found out finally what actually happened and the car that rammed into it, because that person had filed a claim with State Farm. And so our president, Tony, had filed the necessary information with the insurance company. We had to fill out paperwork, we had to send photos, and I got a, what do you call it, an estimate to replace the sign, to fix it, to repair it, from the original company who had put it up decades ago. They're still around doing business and had all the plans. So basically, State Farm has had this information for a while. It was tentatively approved from one section, and it's now into this section that deals with personal property claims caused by an automobile. So it has not yet been reviewed, but hopefully it will be. I called them today, and hopefully they're going to try to rush it up, and we will get that sign repaired. And we are trying to get the money sent directly to the sign company that has to fix it, and not the city of LA, because we'll never see it.
All right, I'm sorry I forgot your name, the lady who's here to talk about the tower.
Yes,
Tower.
yes.
Can I ask you to hang on real quick? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say also the second annual Valley Village Holiday Block Party was a huge success this year. We had over 600 people in attendance. Can I say how many hands of people that came to that?
Okay, thanks you very much.
I'm not done.
Other...
I'm not done.
Okay, well, you've been engaged.
I have a minute. I have a minute.
Okay.
I think it's a shame that this board did not come out and attend and support a public event like that, that 600 of our own residents.
I was there, and there was not 600.
Oh, yes, there was, and we have photographs and we have photographs. You're not supposed to argue with the public.
I was there.
We have photographs and video of it.
You got anything else you want to add, or is that it?
Well, why do you keep interrupting me like I'm boring you?
You've made your point.
Okay, I'm going to report this then, because you're not following Robert's Rules of Orders in the Brown Act like you said at the beginning of the meeting, and you're interrupting me while I'm talking, and you're not supposed to argue with the public when they're presenting things.
I'm not arguing.
She was. She was.
Very much. We're going to move on now. The cell phone tower.
Hi. How are you guys? My name is Julie, this is Elise. Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for sharing. Have you guys gotten any notices or any notification about the cell phone tower, which is actually in Valley Village?
You're talking about the one on Tahunga? It's not in Valley Village.
It's right on the crest. We're not even like Lucy and Ricky with twin beds. We're like sharing another bed. You know?
So the development guidelines that they use to notify people officially, there's a certain radius, and we've not gotten it because we're not in radius. What you all have sent has been what we've received, and I appreciate that.
So this is what we want to say before we start anything else. What Verizon stated and what LA City stated was that they sent notices to Valley Village. That is untrue. They also said that they sent to Studio City Neighborhood Council. That was untrue. No one received a notice about
No, we did get a notice.
When?
It came about a month or more because
about
I
the
picked up the
appeal.
mail.
Because you've
About the
appealed, right?
appeal.
We got to notice the appeal, but to be
No,
honest
the
with you,
original rule.
so let me just give you a little bit of, they may have sent it to us, our planning and land use chair.
I heard it passed away, I'm sorry.
She received that, and her husband's been very gracious to give us all the paperwork. I do not recall seeing an original notice of the construction.
Right.
We did get all the paperwork on the appeal.
Okay, but the appeal is way late in the game. This was done, this is really all kind of background, Matt.
Yeah.
It's kind of background, but it is pertinent in that they bypassed their neighborhood council process. They did not even reach out to Jessica Krikorian's office.
They notified no one, there's like a little shell game happening, so, but, you know, can't go all silkwood on that, because now here we are with the appeal tomorrow. We have, this is a 58-foot cell tower, not just a regular one, it's one of those, the ones that are on the sides of highways, one of these monopines.
This is actually zoned for only 48 feet, so they have given them
An additional
CUP without really any input from neighborhoods about this.
Now, this is from where you are sitting, I'm sorry.
So we've actually, because you've sent information, we've got some background, so can we ask you questions? Because I don't know how we can help you. We typically, as a neighborhood council, have been very careful not to get into other boundaries with something unless that neighborhood council asks us to be involved. Who's the neighborhood council? Is it North Hollywood that would be, is that Pastoral?
Studio City.
Oh, it's Studio City?
And you, because your Valley Village homes,
Right.
there's a house about 100 feet away from the tower. Actually, across the street is Valley Village. So it's actually this little tiny carved out area that like, part of North Hollywood is there, but it's actually, it's actually half of North Hollywood's, when North Hollywood Neighborhood Council reached out to us as well when we were going back and forth with them, they said, oh, that's actually Valley Village, not Studio City. And so what it is it's right down the line, so it's Tahunga and Sarah. And where you are sitting, if that's a bus bench, where you, Maribeth, are sitting, is where the tower starts.
I can give you
Over
the
a
exact
bus bench.
address if that
And
helps any.
where this,
I had trouble, where it's located
yes,
on the
because they
map.
didn't make it clear on the map. It was a very, there's a lot of misleading information. Like one of the sentences says, for example.
Is it east of the 170?
The 101.
It's right in
It's
the,
not east, it's
it's
south.
right in the pocket of the highways. where
It's
they-
not even in the pocket of the highways. They make it sound like that. That's the way it's presented. But the pocket of the highways is like towards the park and towards Riverside Drive. That's where they all start to kind of conflate. This is actually right off of the exit from Tahunga. So it's this long exit, single lane exit thing that starts at Colfax, works its way to Tahunga, loops around and dumps onto Tahunga. So it's a very little kind of, almost looks like a trestle bridge across. And then way down is where all highways start to, and they wrote it like, oh, it's hidden between like highway lanes. It's literally.
I didn't even know where to look.
Our home is across the street from it.
So here's our dilemma.
Just a
We
support.
have to have a motion to be able to say we have a position.
Okay.
And I am very comfortable asking the board to say, hey, you guys, this information doesn't add up and we're not comfortable with the decision you're making. I don't
And it
know
will
that-
impact your property values. That's what Studio City, that's a known
Did
fact.
Studio City take a position?
Yes, we have
They
Studio, did you
Can I
have the letter?
see
We got
that?
all of you. Give me all the letters of Studio City.
The meeting's tomorrow.
That's it, that's all you need, just, yes, yeah. And let me, can I please have all of them, can I give them to them? Julie, can I give them to them, please? Can I give all of them? No, can I please give them to the students? I just want to give them to the students. Can I give all of them? Did you make 10? It won't be that. Yes, they want students to be able to counsel, yes, absolutely. And it can go all the way, you know? Yes, that's right, yes, I want to give it to them. Sorry, you want to give it to them. Sorry.
All right, everybody listen up.
Here's from the Studio City Neighborhood Council. I don't know if you guys would like to take a look at it, but I will say, this large industrial cell tower will be inappropriately close to and incongruous in appearance with the unique, highly desirable, and densely populated residential neighborhood in which it will be placed. And what has been sent to and kind of landed on Kara to Rosine's desk, which isn't always the best thing to happen, is many realtor letters as well, saying that they are shocked that this even got to this placement, that this would deeply devalue. And unfortunately, there's a clause in the Communications Act that we're not allowed to use health reasons to appeal anything. It's a very clear clause, but there you have it.
All right, so what we have a bit of a dilemma here, and their meeting is tomorrow, the appeal hearing is
Yes,
tomorrow.
where we will be in the asking.
When we get a position on somebody, we'll try to send somebody to the appeal hearing, but I
Yes.
cannot go tomorrow.
Can anybody?
But we can give you a letter, and a letter's as good as.
Okay, great.
What I'm concerned about, I need to take the temperature of the board on this. This is not in Valley Village. It is,
What's the address? 4632 Tahunga. It's actually, it's right
Rudy,
there.
I'll get it to you.
Yes, sir. 4632 Tahunga. And actually, on there's that little mappy thing that they send you to show you the different valley, like the different councils, and actually you pop up as the landlords of this thing, but Studio City took over it, but it's,
I would suggest to the board that we can send a letter that I can type tonight, and you have to give me some way to get it to you tomorrow.
yes, I will give you my email.
But we can say that we're not comfortable with this and we need more information, that the information that's been provided by the city does not help us understand what they're doing, and that's the truth.
And can you also say that you're uncomfortable of a tower of this size being in a
The board
residential
have to decide
neighborhood?
that.
Yes, but this is what I'm asking you as a board, to also perhaps include the language that a tower of this size is usually placed on highways and not in residential areas where it can detrimentally impact the look of the neighborhood. I'm just giving you that language because I can promise you.
Health doesn't work.
Health does not work, it doesn't matter. But the fact that it's on top of children, like it's on top of the bus benches, and that's a low economic.
Are they trying to camouflage, those horrible?
Yeah, they're trying to, yes.
Okay.
But it's-
So I need to